They didn't kill me, but they made sure I was buried alive. And the worst part, it was my own family holding the shovel. I'm Sophia. And the day I turned 19, I received a letter that changed my life. Not a birthday card, not a gift, a legal document from the family attorney. No phone call, no warning, just an envelope on my doorstep. Inside was the truth, plain and cold. I was disinherited, completely cut off, my name stripped from every deed, every account, every future plan. My parents, people I once trusted with my heart, decided I was no longer worthy of the life they built. My father's voice still rings in my ears from that one phone call we had after. He said I embarrassed them, that I didn't fit their vision. And then he said it, the sentence that made my blood turn to ice: "You're not our daughter anymore." He hung up. Just like that, I stood there staring at the phone, thinking maybe I imagined it, that I was dreaming. But the silence that followed was real. My mother never called. My brother never texted. My name vanished like smoke. At first, I thought there had to be some mistake, a miscommunication, a misunderstanding. But no, they meant it. They'd planned it, and as I stood there, holding that letter in my hands, something inside me changed. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I promised myself one thing: they wanted me erased. So I'd make myself unforgettable, and by the time I was done with them, the only legacy they'd have left was me. The day after the letter arrived, I went to the house, not to beg, just to see their faces. When I stood on the porch, they said I no longer belonged to. My mother opened the door, then hesitated just for a second, but that second was enough. She looked through me like I was a ghost, like I had already been buried. I asked her why. She didn't answer, just crossed her arms and said, "It's better this way." Better for who? Better for them, maybe. Easier to erase the child who asked too many questions, who wasn't as polished, as silent, as obedient as they needed her to be. My brother came down the stairs behind her. Tyler, my older brother, the one who used to sneak me out to late-night drive-thrus and cover for me when I got in trouble. He didn't say a word either, didn't even look surprised. That was the worst part. He knew. He had known this was coming. I looked at him, waiting for something, anything. A shake of the head, a whispered apology, a flicker of guilt, but there was nothing, just a practiced blankness. I asked if he got my share. He didn't deny it, just said, "It's done," soft, like that explained everything. Like I should just accept that my life had been rewritten without my consent. In that moment, standing on that porch, I realized I hadn't just been cut off, I'd been sacrificed. They needed a scapegoat, a clean story, and they needed someone gone to make it all look legal. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't give them that. I just nodded, and as I walked away, I made another promise to myself: if they wanted to bury me with silence, I'd return with noise. If they thought I would vanish, they had forgotten one thing: I am my father's daughter, and he taught me exactly how to take everything away. I packed my life into a single duffel bag, a few clothes, some books, my laptop, everything else, the bedroom I grew up in, the things my mother gave me, the old photo albums, all left behind like a crime scene no one was allowed to revisit. I found a place on the edge of the city, not even an apartment, just a room in someone else's house. It was small and smelled like old carpet and mildew. The rent was cheap. The neighbors were loud, but it was mine. Or at least, it wasn't theirs. I got a job waitressing at a diner where no one knew who I was or where I came from. No one cared that I used to be someone with a last name people recognized. That was a good thing. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to strip their power away from my name and build something new with my own hands. Every night, I came home with sore feet and tired eyes, and every night I opened my laptop and applied to scholarships, to community colleges, to anything that would take me. I didn't have connections. I didn't have references. All I had was grit. I didn't talk to anyone about what happened, because the truth sounded made up. What kind of parents disown their daughter without reason? What kind of brother smiles as he takes her place? They thought they'd broken me. But what they didn't realize was that cutting me loose didn't leave me weak. It left me free. I was out of their reach, out of their control. And as I rebuilt my life brick by brick, I knew one thing without doubt: they would never see me coming. First, I told myself I didn't care, that I didn't want to know what they were doing, that I was better off letting them rot in their marble house with their hollow smiles and cold bank accounts. But silence is never quiet for long, especially when it's full of unfinished business. I started hearing things, little things, from people who didn't know they were telling me the truth. A customer at the diner mentioned my family's company, the way it had changed leadership recently. A woman in line at the pharmacy gossiped about a new trust fund transfer. They spoke like it was just another headline, but every word made my skin tighten. I stayed quiet, smiled, served coffee, but at night, I started digging. I still had my old emails, archived threads from the family lawyer, estate advisors, accountants. I read through them like a detective hunting for fingerprints, and there it was, buried in the attachments. My name, on legal documents, on transactions I had never seen. They didn't just disown me, they used me. They moved assets in my name and wiped them clean, set up companies under initials and hid them inside other companies. And then, once they had what they needed, they erased me. And the worst part, I think they thought I'd never find out, that I was too soft, too simple, too obedient to look under the floorboards. But they forgot something. They built me. Every ruthless instinct, every strategic thought, every ounce of sharpness I learned from them, and now I was going to use it, not just to get revenge. To outplay them. In the one place they thought they ruled alone, the shadows. I used to think secrets had a smell, like dust or cold metal. But they don't. Not the dangerous ones. Not the kind built behind boardrooms and backdated documents. Those secrets are scentless, silent. They live in plain sight until you know where to look. And I was done not looking. I spent every night at my desk, hunched over my laptop with a single lamp burning beside me. Their names, my father's, my brother's, my mother's, were typed into search bars more times than I could count. And with every search, every link, I saw it coming together like a slow, horrifying puzzle. They didn't just remove me from their lives. They rewrote my part in the story. I found emails between the family attorney and Tyler, my brother. One dated 2 months before my birthday. It mentioned finalizing the asset consolidation and removing the disputed heir. That disputed heir was me. My father had made investments using my social security number. My name was tied to a holding company, S&T Capital, that had been dissolved just weeks before I got the letter. There were transfers, signatures, notarized documents I never signed. My handwriting had been forged. Sloppy, but just convincing enough. That was when it hit me. This wasn't just abandonment. This was theft. They had drained the last pieces of inheritance tied to my name, my trust, my stake in the business, my education fund, and they did it with precision, calculated, coordinated. I wasn't cut out of the family. I was harvested. They took everything they could use, and then they discarded the shell of me like waste. And worst of all, they did it legally, quietly. The world saw them as smart, powerful, a legacy family. But I knew better now. They weren't royalty. They were predators in tailored suits, and I had been their prey. But prey can learn. Prey can adapt. And sometimes prey learns to hunt. That's when the shift happened. I stopped looking for comfort, for closure. I wasn't going to knock on doors or send letters or ask why they did what they did. I already knew why, because I made them uncomfortable. Because I saw things I wasn't supposed to. Because I asked the kind of questions that disrupted the image they wanted to keep. And now I had something they didn't expect, proof. But proof alone wouldn't be enough. Not for a family like mine. They knew how to bury evidence. They knew how to spin lies until the truth sounded like fiction. If I wanted to take them down, I had to become the thing they feared most, a daughter with nothing to lose and everything to expose. when you've been erased by your own blood, trust becomes a fragile thing. You hold it up to the light like glass, waiting to see the cracks before they cut you again. So when I first thought about asking for help, everything in me resisted. But then I remembered someone, Naomi. We weren't best friends. Not anymore. Life had scattered us in different directions after high school. She went into finance. Quiet, brilliant, careful Naomi. The kind of person you didn't notice in a room until she opened her mouth and silenced everyone with facts. I reached out with a single message. Still good at finding things people don't want found? Her reply came 2 minutes later. Send me the names. I met her at a bookstore cafe in the city. She looked sharper than I remembered. Same calm presence, but now wrapped in crisp suits and knowing eyes. When I told her what happened, I expected disbelief, maybe pity, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she pulled out a small leather notebook and started writing. You want revenge, she said, not as a question, but a certainty. No, I told her. I want them exposed. I want truth, she smiled. That's the same thing. With Naomi's help, the dots started connecting faster. She pulled financial data using methods I didn't ask about, searched networks, shell corporations, and off-record transactions. Every night she sent me updates like pieces of a map being revealed line by line. There was a blind trust in the Caymans tied to a silent investor, an investor who shared a name suspiciously close to my father's. There were properties listed under a family holding company properties I had once been a beneficiary of. They were shifting money, liquidating, preparing for something, but the most damning part, Tyler's name kept appearing, over and over, on sale agreements, on emails approving major asset transfers, on bank authorizations. Made just weeks before I turned 19, they had moved everything into his hands, and he had signed it all using my name. Naomi printed everything, bound it, page after page of proof. We sat in her office going over each one like we were preparing for trial. Because in a way we were. I can get you more, she said. But if we do this, you don't come back from it. You'll burn the name, the bridge, the house. I don't need a bridge, I told her. I need a match. That night, I walked back to my tiny room and placed the binder on my desk. My whole life dismantled, distorted, and nearly stolen was now laid bare inside those pages, and the girl they thought they buried? She was about to come back with fire in her hands and a spy at her side. There's something about seeing your own name forged in ink that makes your stomach twist. It's like reading a version of yourself that never existed, like staring into a mirror that lies. Naomi found it, a transaction buried in corporate paperwork. My name signed across a legal document transferring shares from the family estate into a private holding. Except I never signed it. I'd never even seen it. And the signature? It was close, almost perfect. But not mine. Tyler had signed it. My brother, the one who used to sneak me gummy bears during dinner when our parents were fighting. The one who walked me to class when I was scared to start high school. The one who stood silent on that porch as they erased me. He didn't just accept my exile, he orchestrated it. He didn't inherit the business. He stole it. That truth hit harder than any of my father's words. Because Tyler was supposed to be the one person I could have forgiven. The one person who maybe didn't have a choice. But this was deliberate, precise, profitable, and worse than that. He did it for status, for favor, for the throne they handed him once they'd pushed me off it. Naomi printed out the full trail. 3 forged signatures, 2 asset transfers, 1 altered trust agreement. She even found a payment to the attorney who'd mailed me the letter. A bonus for a smooth transition of beneficiary designation. I couldn't breathe when I saw it, but I didn't cry. I sharpened. That's when I realized something. I wasn't the only one watching. Tyler had been keeping tabs on me too. Someone had run background checks on my address. Someone had accessed public surveillance near Naomi's office. They were tracking me quietly. He knew I was getting close. So I decided to push. Naomi and I created a bait file, a false set of investment proposals. A fabricated portfolio tied to a fake identity, someone with connections, capital, and influence. We released the bait into one of the family's known acquisition funnels, and within 2 days, Tyler reached out to the fake alias. He was interested, curious, desperate, and greedy. We had him. I recorded the call. His voice, smooth and confident, talking about low-risk transfers, about moving capital discreetly. He didn't just take the bait, he swallowed it. That was the moment I stopped being the exiled daughter and became something far more dangerous. The invisible threat, the double cross, wasn't mine. It was his, but I was about to make sure it was the last one he ever made without consequence. You'd think revenge feels like fire, loud, explosive, cathartic. But real revenge? It's cold, it's quiet, it's strategic. It creeps in like fog and ruins everything before anyone realizes the sun is gone. I didn't want a confrontation. I wanted collapse. And I was done waiting. We didn't go to court. Not yet. Court is noise. Court is spectacle. I didn't want their names dragged into the open until the damage was irreversible. So instead, I became smoke. I worked with Naomi to open a shell company of our own. Something simple, clean, untraceable. We labeled it as a green tech startup and floated the idea of partnership through a few anonymous brokers. The bait went straight to Tyler. He bit hard. He pushed for a private deal. No board approval. No paper trail. It was almost too easy. He wired money into our holding account within weeks. Real money. Family money. The kind that's supposed to be protected by trustees and governance and generations of legacy. He broke every rule to get it, and we documented everything: emails, phone calls, account numbers, screenshots, his voice saying words he should've never said. I saved every file on 3 separate drives and 1 flash drive I wore around my neck like a weapon. Meanwhile, I leaked whispers to journalists under a burner alias, tips, questions, data leaks. Nothing major, just enough to stir the surface. Articles started appearing, one about inflated earnings, one about an internal audit quietly sweeping the family company, one about a board member stepping down without warning. The cracks were spreading. Tyler tried to fix it by lying. Of course he did, but every lie created another gap. Every denial made reporters dig harder. Every spin made him sweat. My father called an emergency shareholder meeting. I wasn't there, but I watched the live stream, like a symphony, watching the tremor in his voice, the clipped words, the subtle glance toward my brother who looked pale under all that confidence. They were scrambling. They didn't know who was behind it, and that made it worse, because it meant they had no control. I never showed my face. I never signed a name, but I was there, in every boardroom whisper, every redacted email, every phone call that ended in a curse. That's what a silent war looks like. Not fire, not fists, just a girl they thought was gone, tearing their world apart one paper cut at a time. The truth doesn't need to scream to ruin you. Sometimes all it takes is a whisper in the right room, and I had learned how to whisper in all the right places. The story started small, just headlines at first. Family business faces internal turmoil. Anonymous sources suggest financial misconduct. Then came the blogs. Then the interviews. Then the stock dip, and all the while, I stayed invisible. I watched as Tyler tried to plug the holes. He gave statements. He tried to frame it as restructuring, market shifts, normal volatility. But volatility doesn't explain the anonymous documents leaking into journalists' inboxes. It doesn't explain the whistleblower file that appeared on an investigative podcast. It doesn't explain the panic in my father's eyes when he went on camera to reassure the public and instead looked like a man chasing a fire with a glass of water. Because now the narrative was out of their control. They built their legacy on appearance, polish, pride, and perfectly manicured lies. But once people start asking questions, once doubt enters the room, it spreads like mold. And they were rotting from the inside out. Naomi and I watched it unfold like clockwork. The board began calling for transparency. Audits were reopened. External regulators started sniffing around. Shareholders wanted answers. And Tyler? He started unraveling, calling the wrong people, reaching out to contacts he hadn't spoken to in years. He even emailed me a single line, "Please, let's talk." I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I leaked a new file, this time directly to a financial reporter with national reach. The one with my forged signature. The one tied to the fraudulent transfer of my trust shares. The reporter verified it, ran it by a legal expert, and 2 days later, the story broke wide open. Headline: Family Scandal Exposes Years of Forged Documents. An internal theft, a disinherited daughter at the center. My face wasn't in the article, but they knew. Everyone knew. Whispers became accusations, rumors became facts, and my family, the ones who told the world they stood for legacy and loyalty, were now standing in quicksand with cameras pointed at them. The erosion wasn't a landslide. It was steady. It was patient, and it was beautiful, because every empire built on betrayal eventually crumbles, and I wasn't just watching it fall, I was the one pulling the thread. It had been almost a year since I last stood in front of that house, the house I grew up in. The one with marble columns and manicured hedges, gates that whispered legacy, and windows that never opened far enough to let in the truth. I told Naomi I needed to see it, not for closure, not to confront, but because they needed to know I was still here and not hiding anymore. There was a charity gala that night. Big press, local politicians, all of the family's favorite masks in one place. A perfect opportunity to remind them what they lost and what they could never silence. I didn't get an invitation. I didn't need one. I walked through the front gates wearing the kind of dress that made people stare, but not too long. Like power should look confident, sharp, unbothered. I stepped past security with a smile and a name that still unlocked doors, even if my parents wished it wouldn't. The foyer hadn't changed. Same chandeliers, same pretentious art, same people pretending their world wasn't crumbling behind closed doors, but everything else had changed, because this time, I wasn't the girl who was erased. I was the woman they feared showing up. I spotted Tyler first, standing by the bar, laughing too loudly, the kind of laugh people use to mask panic. His eyes met mine across the room, and for a second, he froze. His hand tightened around his drink. He looked like a man seeing a ghost walk through the walls he thought were bulletproof. I didn't blink. Then I saw my mother, her hair pinned back, pearls perfect, expression unreadable. But I noticed the slight tremor in her glass, the way she shifted her weight. She saw me too, and in that moment, we both knew this wasn't a reunion. It was a reckoning. And my father? He was on stage, giving a speech about integrity, about legacy, about the importance of family values. I stood at the back of the crowd as the cameras flashed and the crowd clapped and the light echoed through the hall like a hymn. He saw me right before he stepped off stage. His smile faltered, only for a second, but it was enough. I didn't speak to any of them. I didn't need to. My presence was the statement. I was the storm they tried to silence, the shadow they buried under wealth and lawyers and lies. And now I was here, breathing their air, walking their halls, watching their world rot from the inside. I left before dessert. No drama, no confrontation, just silence louder than any scream, because I wanted them to sit with it, the sight of me, the memory of what they did, the understanding that no matter how far they'd pushed me, no matter how well they'd buried the truth, I had walked right back through the front door like I'd never left, and they had no idea what was coming next. It had to be public, not for attention, not for applause, but because private betrayals deserve public consequences. I'd spent a year gathering every piece of proof, every forged signature, every stolen dollar, every lie whispered into boardrooms and filtered through lawyers like it was gospel. Now, it was time to set the record straight on my terms. Naomi and I called a press conference. We booked a neutral venue, quiet, professional, the kind of place that reporters trust. I didn't tell them who I was not at first, just that I had evidence of corporate fraud, trust manipulation, and years of quiet financial abuse committed by a very prominent family. They showed up, cameras, notepads, microphones, and then I walked out, not as the girl they disinherited, not as the forgotten daughter. I walked out as the whistleblower they didn't see coming. I wore black, spoke clearly, no anger, no tears, just facts, line by line, file by file. A clean presentation of the truth they'd tried to bury with money and fear. I showed them the emails, the forged documents, the fake investment trail, the audio of Tyler accepting illicit funds under my name, and then I showed them the signature mine, compared to his forgery, highlighted, blown up on the projector screen. Silence filled the room. Reporters asked questions. I answered them all. Then one asked the one thing I knew would come. Why now? I looked directly at the camera and said, because I was erased, and I refused to let silence be my legacy. Within hours, the story went national. News anchors debated it. Financial panels analyzed it. Online forums lit up with theories and outrage. My name, once wiped from every account, was now everywhere. And their names? They were under scrutiny. Tyler, my father, even my mother, who had signed off on routine filings that now looked a lot like criminal neglect. The estate was frozen, the company's stock dropped, the family attorney resigned, everything they had built on a lie cracked in half on live television. I didn't celebrate, not yet, because this wasn't about headlines or followers. It was about justice, and I had only just begun. I didn't expect the knock at my door that morning. I wasn't scared. I wasn't even surprised. I was just still. It was Naomi who opened it. Two federal agents standing there, badges out, eyes sharp. Not for me, for confirmation, for clarity. They just said one sentence. It's happening. They let me know that charges had been filed, that Tyler had been named, that my father was under full investigation. They asked me a few final questions, thanked me for my cooperation, and left. 3 hours later, the footage hit the internet. Tyler, my brother, being walked out of his condo in cuffs. No resistance, no words, just silence, like the kind you hear after an explosion, when everything is dust and ringing and nothing will ever sound the same again. They got him on wire fraud, embezzlement, and identity theft, all of it backed by my files, my evidence, my name. My father didn't go down as easily. He tried to claim ignorance, blamed Tyler, blamed the attorney, tried to spin the narrative like he always did. But investigators don't care about image. They care about paper trails. And I had plenty of those. His accounts were frozen. His assets flagged. The foundation he used as a tax shelter? Gone. The private accounts in Switzerland? Under lock. And my mother? She vanished 2 days after the press conference. She boarded a flight overseas and didn't come back. No contact, no comment, just silence, her specialty. But I wasn't chasing them anymore. I wasn't looking back. The world finally saw what I had lived through. The betrayal, the fraud, the lies painted as parenting. They weren't royalty. They weren't untouchable. They were just people who thought blood made them immune. And they were wrong. The media spun it into a story of justice, of power reclaimed, of the daughter who wouldn't disappear. But it wasn't justice yet, because justice would never restore what they stole from me. But accountability? That was a start. I didn't need them to beg. I didn't need them to break. I just needed the world to stop believing the mask. And now that it had cracked, there was no putting it back on. It came in a white envelope. No return address, no letterhead, just my name typed, not handwritten. No emotion, no fingerprints, just an invitation. Inside was a single sheet of paper, an offer. The board of directors at Langley Holdings, the company my father built, the one my brother dismantled, was requesting a meeting. They wanted to discuss a transition, a restoration, a seat at the table. My seat. The irony didn't hit me all at once. It rolled in slowly. After everything, the exile, the lies, the silence, the erasure. Now they wanted me back. Now that the foundation was cracked and the house was on fire, they were suddenly reaching for the girl they threw out with the ashes. Naomi said I should go, that it would be a full circle moment, and maybe she was right, but I didn't want full circle. I wanted something they never gave me: freedom. Still, I went. The meeting was in the same glass tower my father used to call his kingdom. I walked into the boardroom where I used to sit silently as a teenager while they made decisions about money, mergers, and the future. I remembered how they used to pat me on the head and say, "One day, you'll understand." Now, they stood. When I entered, 8 people in tailored suits, uncertainty on their faces. They offered me a position: executive, advisory. They told me I had proven an extraordinary level of resilience and strategy. They called me brilliant, relentless, a visionary, funny. They used to call me emotional, difficult, reckless. What changed? Not me, them. They were scrambling to salvage the brand, trying to turn me into a redemption arc, a headline, a comeback story. I listened, I let them talk, and then, when they finally stopped, I said something I never thought I'd hear myself say: no. The words settled like dust. I stood up, slowly, calmly. I'm not here to fix what my father broke. I'm not here to reclaim a name you all helped him destroy. I built something better, without you, without your permission, without your table, and I don't need a seat. I built my own. They didn't stop me as I walked out, because deep down, they knew power isn't about titles or legacy. It's about knowing who you are when no one claps for you, and I had learned that lesson the hard way. I stepped back into the elevator, the city rising around me. No crown, no empire, just a name I made untouchable again, not because I wanted revenge anymore, but because I finally understood the difference between surviving and becoming, and I had become everything they said I couldn't be, without them, because of them. In spite of them, I used to think legacy was something you inherited, something passed down in blood and name, wrapped in gold crests and old money and hollow traditions. That's what they told me it was. That's what my father built his world around. But I learned the truth: legacy isn't what you inherit, it's what you create when no one thinks you can. I didn't take their offer. I didn't return to their company. I didn't fix the ruin they left behind. Instead, I walked away completely. For good. No safety net. No name to lean on. No inherited capital. Just everything I'd earned with grit and fire and silence. And that was enough. Naomi and I registered a new company within the month. Clean. Sharp. Not in finance. Not in law. Something different. We built it around strategy, crisis navigation, reputation repair. But more than that, we built it for people like me, people who'd been chewed up by systems they trusted, thrown away by families they depended on, erased by the institutions that were supposed to protect them. It started small: a single room, 2 laptops, a shared desk. Clients came slowly, hesitant, curious, but one by one, they walked through our doors with stories that sounded too familiar. They didn't need sympathy. They needed power. They needed clarity. They needed tools to take back what was theirs, and we gave it to them. We didn't advertise. We didn't beg for press, but word spread anyway. Because there's something magnetic about a woman who doesn't apologize for surviving, and I had survived, but more than that, I had transformed. People asked if I ever thought about revenge anymore, if I ever regretted not taking back the company, not standing at the top of the empire that once kicked me out. No, because I didn't want their throne. I wanted to burn the idea that I ever needed it. Instead, I gave interviews. I wrote essays. I told the truth not for attention, but for the girl out there with a letter in her hand and no one left to call. The one who just lost everything and thinks maybe she can't come back from it. She can. I did. I gave speeches. Not about business, about resilience, about betrayal, about how sometimes the most dangerous thing you can become is the person they didn't believe in. My last name no longer opened doors. But my story did. That was the legacy I wrote, not one of wealth or titles, but one of fire, of return, of choosing yourself, even when the people who raised you tried to erase every piece of you. I waited a long time before writing it, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I needed to mean every word. There were 1,000 versions of the letter I could have sent, angry ones, bitter ones, the kind that bleed ink with grief and betrayal. But I didn't want catharsis, I wanted clarity. So I kept it simple. It was addressed to my father, but it was meant for all of them. I wrote, "You once told me I wasn't your daughter anymore, that I had embarrassed you, that I didn't belong. You were right, but not for the reasons you thought. I didn't belong in a house built on control. I didn't belong in a story where love was conditional. And I'm not your daughter anymore because I chose not to be. You taught me that family can cut deeper than enemies. You showed me how power is used to silence, erase, manipulate. But you also taught me something else without meaning to. You taught me how to survive, how to listen, how to wait, and then you taught me how to fight. I took your lessons, I took the pain, and I built something unbreakable, not a company, not a name, me. I don't want anything from you, not apology, not understanding, not forgiveness. I just want you to know I remember everything, and I am no longer yours to bury. I signed it with my full name, the one I almost lost, the one they tried to erase, the one I had to rebuild piece by piece after they shattered it. Then I sealed the envelope and mailed it, not for his reaction, not for closure, but as a line in the sand. I wasn't seeking justice anymore. I had found it, and I wasn't a daughter seeking approval. I was a woman who had walked through fire and come out unrecognizable. The people who lit the match. I stood at the edge of my new world, no legacy behind me, no leash around my neck, no debts left to pay, just freedom, and the knowledge that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can buy is the version of yourself they never saw coming.